The men who think most clearly often move most slowly. I have observed this pattern in every workshop, every court, every academy I have entered. Give a simple man a simple task, he completes it by sunset. Give a brilliant mind that same task, he may still be planning it at sunrise. This is not weakness. This is not laziness. This is the weight of seeing too many possibilities, too many paths, too many ways a thing might fail. But here is what the academies do not teach. Observation without action is merely philosophy. Action without observation is merely labor. Today I will show you the narrow bridge between these two cliffs and how to walk it without falling. You have felt it, that peculiar paralysis when your mind moves faster than your hands can follow. You see the flaws in your work before the work has even begun. You understand so much that simple action becomes complicated. This is not your weakness speaking. This is your intelligence creating its own cage. I do not speak as one who has conquered this. I speak as one who has lived inside it. For decades, I have walked the courts of Florence, Milan, Rome, observing not only nature but also the nature of learned men. I have seen mathematicians unable to build. I have seen architects unable to draw. I have seen scholars who could recite every treatise on optics, yet could not paint a shadow. And I have felt within myself the gap between vision and execution grow so wide that I questioned whether my hands belonged to the same man as my mind. Most believe that thinking deeply is the path to mastery. But I tell you this, thinking can become a substitute for doing, and planning can become a refuge from failure. You know this already. How many projects lie unfinished in your workshop? How many ideas remain perfect in your mind because you have not yet risked their imperfection in reality? I will not give you motivation. You do not lack desire. I will not give you inspiration. You already see what could be. What I offer you is this: the observational principles that allow thought to become action, the marriage of mind and hand, the way to move from the paralysis of perfect vision into the motion of imperfect creation. This comes not from my philosophy, but from my notebooks, my failed works, my abandoned paintings, and the one great lesson learned from watching my bronze horse used for target practice. Right now, your intelligence feels like weight. After our time together, it will feel like wind in your sail. Right now, you see too many paths and choose none. Soon, you will understand how to see many paths and walk one completely. Right now, perfection stops you. Soon, you will learn what I learned too late, that completion teaches more than conception ever can. Others will tell you to just start or silence your inner critic. But these are the words of men who have never carried a vision so luminous that reality seems dim beside it. I speak to those who see too much, not too little. Those whose problem is not ignorance, but excess of understanding. The principles I share come from observing nature's own method. How a river does not plan its course, but finds it through motion. How a bird does not perfect flight in its mind, but discovers it through falling. Let me take you into my workshop in Milan. During the years when Duke Ludovico il Moro kept me in his service, what I am about to tell you, I have never written in my treatises, for it reveals not my triumphs, but my method of escaping my own mind. The prior of Santa Maria delle Grazie grew impatient with me. He complained to the Duke that I would stand before the wall for hours without touching my brush. He wastes whole days in contemplation, the prior said, but what he saw as waste was actually warfare. The battle between the image in my mind and the first mark upon wet plaster. When you see the painting now, you see Jesus among his disciples. the moment of betrayal made visible. But what you cannot see is the 100 compositions I rejected before making the first line. In my mind, I could see Judas's face with such clarity, the exact angle of shadow that would reveal guilt without naming it, the curve of his back as he reaches for the bread, the way his hand would mirror Christ's hand yet show opposition in every line. I could see Peter leaning forward with such force that the viewer would feel the motion. I could see the light coming through the windows behind them, falling on the table with mathematical precision. But the moment I moved to paint, I knew this first mark is permanent. Fresco does not forgive. You paint on wet plaster, and as it dries, your pigments become part of the wall itself. You cannot scrape it away like oil paint. You cannot cover your errors. Every mark is a decision that will outlive you. This is what paralyzes the thinking mind, not fear of doing it wrong, but knowledge that there are infinite ways to do it right, and choosing one means abandoning all others. The prior saw a lazy painter. I was actually a general surveying a battlefield, knowing that the first move determines all moves that follow. I would stand there in the refectory, and in my mind I could see not just one Last Supper, but dozens. I could see versions where Judas sat on the opposite side, versions where the light came from a different angle, versions where the disciples' hands told different stories. Each version was perfect in its own way. Each choice eliminated 1,000 others. Do you understand? This is the curse of the intelligent mind. The simple painter sees one way forward and takes it. The master painter sees 100 ways forward and freezes, trying to choose which path leads to perfection. One morning, I simply began, not because I had solved the problem, but because I realized the wall teaches you what the mind cannot imagine. I painted Judas's arm reaching for bread, and in that action, I discovered an angle I had not envisioned. The wet plaster responded to my brush in ways I had not predicted. The pigment spread differently than I calculated, and in these small surprises, in these tiny failures of prediction, the painting taught me. It showed me possibilities my mind alone could never generate, but it could only teach through motion, never through thought alone. The prior never understood this. He saw me standing still and thought I was idle. He saw me working and thought I was productive. But both states were part of the same creation. The difference was this: standing still, I generated infinite possibilities. Moving, I discovered actual truth. And actual truth, however imperfect, is worth more than infinite perfect possibilities. Now let me tell you about the bronze horse. And here I must confess my greatest failure. For 16 years, I worked on the equestrian monument for Francesco Sforza. 16 years. When the Duke first commissioned this work, I was young, full of ambition, burning to create something the world had never seen. In my early models, the horse reared on its hind legs, a feat never attempted in bronze at such a scale. Magnificent. Impossible. I spent years calculating the weight distribution, the thickness of metal needed, the internal supports required. I filled pages with drawings, with mathematics, with engineering solutions. The Duke grew impatient. I made a new design, the horse with 1 foot raised, more achievable, still magnificent, still unlike anything created before. I built the clay model, and it grew under my hands. It stood 3 times life size in the courtyard of the Corte Vecchia. and men came from across Italy to witness it. The poet Balencioni wrote verses about it, calling me the new Apelles. My friend Luca Pacioli declared it would be my masterpiece. Crowds gathered just to see the clay model, imagining what it would be when cast in bronze, this massive horse that would tower over the piazza, honoring the Duke's father, showing Milan's power and my genius to the world. Yet still it was not cast. Why? Because I kept seeing ways to improve it. The musculature of the neck could be more anatomically precise. I had dissected horses. I knew exactly how those muscles attached to bone, and I could see small errors in my model. The mane could capture more motion. I had studied hair, water, wind, and I knew I could show more life in those bronze strands. The stance of the legs could be adjusted by mere inches to show more power. Each time I prepared for casting, I saw one more flaw, one more improvement, one more delay. The Duke needed this monument. It was meant to legitimize his rule, to honor his family, to show that Milan under the Sforzas was the new Rome. But I kept adjusting, refining, perfecting. One more month, I would say, one more season. Let me study the anatomy again. Let me recalculate the weight. Let me adjust the armature. The Duke was patient with me because he knew what I could create. But patience has limits, even for princes. Then the French came. King Charles VIII invaded Italy with an army that moved faster than anyone expected. Duke Ludovico needed bronze, not for monuments, but for cannons. The bronze I had requisitioned, stored, prepared for casting my horse, it was melted down for weapons. My clay model stood in the courtyard, defenseless, as the French army entered Milan. I was not there to see it, but others told me what happened. The Gascon bowmen, those soldiers from France, they used my life's work for target practice. Imagine this: 16 years of thought, of calculation, of anatomical study, of artistic vision, reduced to a target for bored soldiers. I watched arrows pierce the neck I had sculpted with such care, understanding the exact placement of every muscle. The legs I had proportioned using mathematical ratios from Vitruvius, they crumbled under the impact. The head, where I had captured the nobility and strength of the horse's spirit, shattered. In a single afternoon, 16 years vanished. Not even vanished, destroyed mockingly, casually, by men who never thought about art or beauty or legacy at all. Here is what I learned, what I should have learned years earlier, standing in that courtyard watching the fragments of my clay horse being swept away. An imperfect work that exists teaches the world. A perfect work that remains in your mind teaches nothing. If I had cast that horse after 5 years instead of 16, yes, it would have had flaws. The anatomy might have been less precise. The engineering might have been merely excellent instead of perfect. But it would have stood in that piazza. And when the French came, perhaps the Duke would not have melted it for cannons, because it would already have been a finished monument, a symbol of Milan's glory, harder to destroy than an unfinished dream. The bronze horse that was never cast taught no one about form, about motion, about the nobility of the equine spirit. It was perfect in my vision and worthless to humanity. The clay horse riddled with arrows at least existed enough to be destroyed. Do you see the terrible mathematics of this? 16 years of near perfection equals 0 actual years of value. An imperfect monument standing for even 1 year would have given more to the world than my perfect vision that never became real. Now let me tell you about my anatomical studies. And here I must make another confession. I have dissected more than 30 human bodies, men, women, old, young, healthy, diseased. I have traced the path of nerves through the arm with such precision that I discovered things physicians had never recorded. I have drawn the muscles of the leg in layers, showing how they wrap around bone, how they connect to sinew, how they work together to create motion. I have mapped the organs, showing their true positions, their relationships to each other. I have even drawn the child in the womb, showing how it curls inside the mother, fed by vessels. I carefully traced through the dissection of a pregnant woman who died in childbirth. When the Cardinal of Aragon visited my studio here in France, his secretary recorded that I had written on anatomy in such detail, with such illustrations, in a manner that has never yet been done by anyone else. I showed on my pages hundreds of sheets covered with drawings so precise that every vein, every muscle, every bone is captured with the accuracy of direct observation. The secretary wrote that these would be profitable and delightful if published. But here is my confession. These drawings remain in disorder. They are not bound. They are not organized. They are not published. They sit in my workshop, mixed with my drawings of water, of machines, of flying contraptions, of fortifications, of mathematical studies. Some pages are complete. Some have notes in the margins that only I understand. Some reference other pages that might be in different notebooks entirely. I have always intended to create the great treatise on anatomy. I have always meant to organize them, to write clear explanations, to arrange them so that others could learn from my observations. My friend Luca tells me I should publish what exists rather than wait for perfection. He reminds me that others are publishing anatomical works right now, less accurate than mine, yes, but available to students, to physicians, to the world. Andreas Vesalius, a physician I have never met, is preparing his own anatomical treatise. His drawings will not be as precise as mine. His observations will miss things I have discovered. But his work will teach thousands, because he understands something I am only now learning. Completion is its own form of perfection. So the knowledge sits in my workshop, perfectly observed, beautifully drawn, and completely useless to anyone but myself. After I die, my young student Francesco Melzi will inherit these papers. He is a good boy, faithful, and I know he will try to organize them to fulfill my intention, to give the world what I meant to give. He will spend years on this task, probably decades, and he will fail not because he lacks dedication, but because the task is impossible. You cannot organize another man's mind, especially when that mind generated faster than it could complete. Meanwhile, other anatomists publish lesser works that change the world because they understand something. I have resisted understanding. A published imperfection teaches more than an unpublished masterpiece. My drawings are more accurate. My observations are more detailed. My understanding is more complete. And none of it matters, because it remains trapped in my workshop, waiting for a level of organization and explanation that I will never achieve. You see now the pattern in my life, the pattern I have observed in every learned person I have known. The mind sees further than the hand can reach. But here is what decades of observation have taught me about why this happens, and more importantly, how to escape it. Let me now give you the principles I have extracted from these failures, for observation of failure teaches more than observation of success ever can. The first principle is this: the more clearly you see the ideal, the more every actual mark appears as failure. This is the tyranny of perfect vision. The simple craftsman does not suffer this. He sees dimly what could be, so what is seems adequate. But you, who can imagine with precision, you suffer the contrast between vision and reality with every action. I discovered this through painting. When teaching students, I noticed something strange. Those with less training painted more freely. They did not know enough to see their errors, so they moved with confidence. Their work was crude, yes, but it was energetic, alive, unafraid. But as they learned, as they began to understand perspective, the way parallel lines converge to a vanishing point, as they studied proportion, learning that the human body measures 7.5 heads tall, as they discovered the laws of light, understanding how shadows must fall based on the angle of illumination, they slowed. Their improved knowledge created improved judgment, and improved judgment created paralysis. They could now see that their line was not quite straight, that their proportion was slightly off, that their shadow fell at the wrong angle. Knowledge had turned from gift into burden. Here is the principle: vision must serve action, not replace it. In nature, I observe that the falcon does not envision catching the dove, it simply sees motion and responds. The hunting cat does not plan the perfect pounce in its mind, it moves when the distance closes to the right measure. Perfect vision is useful only if it guides imperfect action. The falcon sometimes misses, the cat sometimes pounces too early, but they learn through motion, through the feedback of failure, through the accumulated wisdom that comes from actual attempts, not imagined ones. You must learn to see like the mason, not the architect. The architect sees the completed building, glorious, perfect, whole, standing finished in his mind with every detail resolved. But if he tried to build it himself, with this complete vision governing every brick, he would never lay the first stone. The burden would crush him. The mason sees only this brick, this mortar, this level. Is this brick level with the last? Is the mortar mixed to the right consistency? Does this course align properly? The building emerges from accumulated small acts, none of which are perfect, all of which are complete. The mason does not ask if this single brick is worthy of the cathedral. He asks only if this brick is properly laid. The cathedral takes care of itself. The second principle: knowledge creates complexity where none existed. A child learning to draw makes a mark without hesitation. The charcoal touches the paper and a line appears. Joy, discovery, motion. Ask that same child, after years of training, to make a single line, and watch. He pauses. He knows now that a line can be thick or thin, straight or curved, light or dark, swift or slow, confident or tentative. He knows that this line will imply space, will suggest form, will begin a composition that must be resolved. Knowledge has turned one action into 1,000 choices. I see this in all disciplines. The beginning student of geometry draws a circle with joy. Look, he thinks, I have made a round shape. The master mathematician sees that same circle and must decide, what is my definition of curve? What center point am I using? What relationship does this circle have to other forms? What does this circle represent? What level of precision is required? The more he knows, the more he must choose. And the more he must choose, the longer he stands with compass in hand, making nothing. This is why expertise can become burden. My friend Luca Pacioli, the mathematician, once spent an entire day calculating the proportions for a single figure in his treatise on divine proportion. A full day for something an apprentice could have drawn in minutes. His drawing was more accurate. Yes, the proportions were mathematically perfect, but was it worth the cost of motion? He completed one figure that day. The apprentice could have completed 20, learning from each one, building skill through repetition rather than perfection through calculation. The principle is this: knowledge should reduce uncertainty, not increase it. But in brilliant minds, knowledge creates branching paths. You see not one way forward, but 10, and you freeze trying to choose the optimal one. Nature does not do this. Water does not stand at the top of the mountain, analyzing all possible paths to the sea. It simply moves downward, and moving downward, it finds its way. It does not choose the perfect path. It chooses the path that presents itself, and through motion, through friction against rock and earth, it discovers its course. The river is not planned. It is found through flowing. You must learn to use knowledge like the sculptor uses the chisel as a tool that reveals the form through removal, not addition. The sculptor does not add knowledge to the stone. He removes stone to reveal the form that was always there. Each strike of the chisel eliminates possibility. This block could have been 1,000 different statues, but with each chip removed, it becomes more specifically one statue. Knowledge should work this way. Each new thing you learn should eliminate possible paths, not create them. Ask not what else could I know, but rather what can I now eliminate as unnecessary? What paths can I now ignore because I understand they lead nowhere? The third principle, and this is the most dangerous: perfection becomes refuge from failure. I will tell you a secret about my unfinished paintings. Part of me preferred them that way. In my mind, they were flawless. Every brushstroke perfect. Every color precisely mixed. Every shadow falling with mathematical accuracy. The moment I completed them, they became objects subject to judgment, mine and others. But the incomplete work lives in possibility. It remains perfect because it cannot be tested against reality. The complete work lives in reality, with all its flaws made visible. This is a trap so subtle that most never recognize they are caught in it. You refine your plan endlessly, not because it needs more refinement, but because planning feels like progress without risk of failure. The plan cannot be rejected. The viewer cannot say your plan is poorly executed. The critic cannot point to flaws in your plan. The plan remains pure, untouched by the compromises of reality, the limitations of materials, the evidence of your own inadequacy. Planning is safe. Execution is dangerous. I have seen this in every workshop. The apprentice who endlessly sketches but never paints. He has books full of sketches, some quite good, but no paintings. Why? Because the sketch cannot fail. The sketch is possibility. The painting is reality. The engineer who perfects designs but never builds. His designs are brilliant on paper, solving problems in elegant ways, but no structure stands in the world bearing his name. The musician who practices scales but never performs. Her technique is flawless in the practice room, but no audience has heard her music. They all tell themselves they are not yet ready. But ready for what? Failure is not something that waits at the end of preparation. It is the very method of learning. Watch the child learning to walk. She falls. She stands. She falls again. She tries a different position of her feet. She falls. She adjusts her balance. She stands for 3 seconds. She falls. At no point does she sit down and plan the perfect walk. At no point does she wait until she can envision perfect walking before attempting the first step. The falling teaches the balance. The falling teaches which muscles to engage. The falling teaches how to catch yourself. Action teaches what planning cannot. Here is the principle. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the material from which success is built. But you can only fail at something you have actually attempted. The painting in your mind cannot teach you anything because it cannot fail. It remains perfect because it remains imaginary. Only the painting on the wall, with all its failures made visible, can show you what you did not know. Only the painting on the wall can teach you that this particular blue is too transparent, that this shadow needs more umber, that this figure's arm is slightly too long, that this composition lacks balance in ways you never predicted. The word perfect comes from perfectus in Latin, meaning thoroughly made, completed, not flawless, complete. A work riddled with errors but finished is more perfect in the true sense than an immaculate vision that remains in your head. The completed thing exists. It can be observed. It can teach. It can be improved upon in the next work. The imaginary thing teaches no one, not even yourself. The fourth principle. The fertile mind generates faster than the hand executes. In my notebooks, you will find drawings of flying machines modeled on the wings of birds and bats. You will find designs for underwater vessels that would allow men to move beneath the surface like fish. You will find self-propelled carts that move without horses. You will find musical instruments that play themselves through mechanical means. You will find designs for entire cities built to resist plague, with separate levels for people and for sewage, with wide streets and proper ventilation. You will find weapons, terrible weapons, siege machines, multiple-barreled cannons, armored vehicles. You will find theatrical devices for court spectacles. You will find studies of water showing how it spirals and flows. You will find studies of light showing how it reflects and refracts. You will find studies of proportion, of mathematics, of natural philosophy. Thousands of pages, most never built. Is this waste? My critics say yes. They say I scattered my attention, that I lacked discipline, that I should have focused on one thing, painting or sculpture or architecture, and become truly great in that one thing instead of adequate in many. But I tell you, the mind that generates abundantly is not flawed, it is doing what minds do. The apple tree does not apologize for producing more blossoms than will become fruit. It is the nature of the apple tree to blossom abundantly, and nature herself selects which blossoms will fruit through wind, through bees, through rain, through sun. The tree does not try to control this. It simply blossoms. But here is where intelligent men make their error. They believe that not pursuing an idea is the same as wasting it. So they try to pursue everything, completing nothing. Or they freeze, unable to choose, because choosing one path means abandoning others, and abandoning ideas feels like killing possibilities. But ideas are not children. You do not owe them all equal devotion. I have learned this, though I learned it too late. The mind generates, but the hand must select. Your imagination should produce 10 ideas. Your judgment should choose one. Your hand should complete that one before the mind generates 10 more. This is the rhythm of creation, generation, selection, completion, generation, again. But most people get stuck at generation or caught between generation and selection, producing endless ideas and completing none. The principle is this: generation without selection is not creativity, it is noise. You must become ruthless in choosing. Not every idea deserves execution. In fact, most ideas exist only to help you discover the few ideas that matter. When I sketch, I make many marks. Most marks are searching marks, testing marks, finding marks. Only a few marks are the actual drawing. But I need the searching marks to find the drawing marks. The searching marks are not waste, they are process. The sculptor does not apologize for the stone he removes. The removed stone is necessary to reveal the form. Neither should you apologize for the ideas you set aside. The set-aside ideas are necessary to reveal the idea worth pursuing. The fifth and deepest principle, true understanding, requires the resistance of reality. In my studies of human anatomy, I learned something unexpected. I could draw the arm muscles from memory after one dissection. My visual memory is strong. I can observe something once and recall it precisely. But it took 3 dissections before I understood how the arm muscles actually moved. The first dissection showed me form here is this muscle, this shape, this size. The second dissection showed me attachment here is where this muscle connects to bone, where it begins and ends. The third dissection showed me function. When I pulled this tendon, these muscles contracted in this sequence to produce this motion. No amount of thinking could replace the resistance of actual tissue, actual bones, actual observation of motion. This is the deepest lesson. Understanding appears to happen in the mind, but it actually happens at the border between mind and world. The world pushes back. Your theory meets friction. This friction is not obstruction, it is instruction. When I tried to paint water, I thought I understood it from observation. I had watched rivers, fountains, rain, waves. I had studied the patterns of ripples, the way water spirals when it falls, the way it reflects light. But when my brush met the panel, the paint did not flow as I imagined. Too thick, it sat on the surface like oil. Too thin, it ran down the panel like tears. The pigment separated in ways I had not predicted. The reflections I tried to capture looked muddy when I actually painted them. Hours of thinking about water could not teach me what 5 minutes of actually painting water revealed. This is why men of theory often remain trapped. They never submit their understanding to the resistance of reality. The philosopher who writes about virtue but never acts virtuously learns nothing true about virtue. He understands the concept, yes, but concepts are not the same as reality. The architect who draws buildings but never builds them understands nothing real about stone, about weight, about the way materials actually behave under stress, about how rain affects mortar, about how buildings settle, about the 1,000 small problems that appear only when theory meets material. His drawings may be beautiful, but they are fantasies if they have never been tested by construction. You cannot learn to swim by contemplation. At some point, you must enter the water. The water will teach you things about swimming that thinking never could. It will teach you through your failures, through swallowing water, through struggling to stay afloat, through the hundreds of small adjustments your body makes without your conscious thought. You will learn that breathing must be timed with strokes. You will learn that your body is more buoyant than you expected. You will learn that efficient swimming feels different than you imagined. The water teaches these things. The mind alone cannot. The principle is this: thought prepares, but reality completes. You must become comfortable with the gap between what you imagined. This gap is not evidence of your failure, it is the space where learning lives. The master is not the one who eliminates this gap through perfect planning. The master is the one who has learned to love the gap, to learn from it, to use it as the very tool of refinement. Every time reality surprises you, you are being taught. Every time your execution falls short of your vision, you are discovering what you did not know. This is not failure, this is education. But it only happens if you act. Now you understand the patterns that trap the intelligent mind. But understanding is not enough. You already knew that. What you need is method. Let me give you the practices that can break these ancient patterns. Everything I have told you comes from observation. What I now give you comes from application. These are not theories to contemplate, they are practices to enact. Start with one. Today. Not tomorrow. Today. The first practice I call the law of the single line. Every morning, before you allow your mind to generate new possibilities, complete one small thing, one drawing, one paragraph, one calculation, one small stone laid with precision. Not something that advances your grand vision, something that exists. A single line drawn with full attention is worth more than 10 compositions planned in your mind. Why? Because the single line teaches you what you did not know about line. It reveals the resistance of the surface, the nature of the medium, the truth about your own hand's capabilities. Do this. Choose the smallest possible unit of your work. If you are painting, make one brush stroke. If you are writing, write one sentence. If you are building, place one stone. Do this before breakfast, before planning, before improvement. The practice is not about advancing your project, it is about training your mind to complete what it begins. This must be small enough that perfection cannot delay it, yet real enough that it meets the resistance of the world. When you have done this for 30 days, you will notice something. Your mind still generates abundantly, but your hands have learned to move despite degeneration. Thought and action become companions, not enemies. The second practice is the discipline of the imperfect finish. Take one work, one small work, and decide before you begin. I will spend 3 hours on this, or I will make 10 attempts, or I will work until sunset, and then I will call it complete. Not perfect, complete. This practice wars against your nature. Everything in you will resist this boundary. You will see ways to improve. You will feel the gap between your vision and the execution. Good. Feel it. Note it. Do this. Declare before witnesses that you will complete something by a specific time. Make the declaration public so that your pride enforces what your discipline cannot. Tell your friend, your teacher, your family. In 3 days, I will show you this completed thing. When the time arrives, whatever state the work occupies, present it, show it, allow it to be judged. This is how you learn that completed things, however imperfect, teach more than perfect things that remain hidden. I wish I had done this with my bronze horse. If I had declared, in 2 years we cast it, whatever its state, the world would have received an imperfect monument that still stood when the French arrived. Instead, the world received nothing. 16 years of near perfection equals 0 actual years of value. The third practice is the method of the mason. When you begin work, cover your complete plan. Hide it. See only the next small action required. The mason building a cathedral does not hold the full vision of the completed building in his mind while laying a brick he would freeze with inadequacy. How can this single brick, this small rectangle of fired clay, possibly become a soaring cathedral? The weight would crush him. He sees. Level this stone, apply this mortar, place the next stone, check the level. Does this corner align with that corner? Is this course straight? These small questions, the building emerges from this narrow focus. Do this. Each day, before beginning work, write down only the next 3 actions required. Not the full plan, 3 actions. Mix this color, paint this shadow, clean this brush. When these 3 are complete, write 3 more. Never hold more than 3 actions in your mind at once. This practice seems simple. It is profound. It prevents the paralysis that comes from seeing the 1,000 miles while standing at the first step. The mind can plan vastly. The hand can only act locally. By limiting your vision to the local action, you free your hand to move. The cathedral appears 1 brick at a time, not through grand vision, but through small, persistent action. The fourth practice is the practice of observed failure. Once each week, attempt something you know you will do poorly. Paint with your non-dominant hand. Try to draw a perfect circle without compass. Attempt to solve a problem in an unfamiliar method. Mix colors you have never mixed. Play music you have never practiced. The purpose is not success, it is observation of failure without judgment. When you fail at something you intended to master, you experience shame. Your identity feels threatened. But when you fail at something you knew you would fail at, what exactly went wrong? Where did the hand betray the intention? Do this. Keep a small notebook titled Failures Observed. After each deliberate failure, write 3 sentences. What I attempted, what actually happened, what this reveals. Over time, this practice trains your mind to see failure not as judgment, but as data. Failure becomes interesting rather than threatening. You develop the eye of the natural philosopher, observing phenomena without attachment to outcome. This is how I learned about the nature of pigments, of mixing, of layering, not through my masterpieces, but through my experiments that produced mud, that cracked, that faded. These failures taught me more than my successes ever could, because I was paying attention to them. The fifth practice is the principle of public progress. Your instinct is to hide imperfect work. Fight this instinct. Once each month, show someone your work in its incomplete state, not to receive praise, to receive reality. The person viewing your work sees what you cannot. They see it fresh, without the comparison to your perfect internal vision. They can tell you what they actually see, rather than what you intended them to see. This gap is valuable beyond measure. Do this. Find one person who understands your craft. Show them your work halfway through. Do not explain. Do not justify. Do not say what you were trying to do. Simply show. Then ask, what do you see? Not is it good, but what do you see? Their description will reveal what you have actually created versus what you thought you were creating. This practice breaks the protection of the hidden work. It forces your vision to meet another mind's perception. This collision is painful and necessary. Your mind tells you the painting shows grief. The viewer sees anger. This gap is information. Use it. Either your execution is not matching your intention, or your intention is not as clear as you believed. Either way, you learn. But you can only learn this by showing the work, by making it public, by allowing reality to intrude on your perfect internal vision. The work that remains hidden remains unjudged, yes, but also unimproved and ultimately unfinished. These 5 practices work against your natural tendencies. This is their purpose. The thinking mind, left to its own patterns, creates the same traps. These practices are not meant to be comfortable, they are meant to be effective. Choose one. Begin today, not tomorrow. Today, this very day, before sunset. Make one small thing. Set one boundary. Limit yourself to 3 actions. Attempt one small failure. Show one person one incomplete thing. Do not wait. Do not plan the perfect implementation of these practices. That would be the same trap planning, the perfect escape from the trap of planning. Just begin. Imperfectly. Immediately. Now. You now understand what I spent 6 decades learning. The brilliant mind creates its own prison. You see too much to act simply. You understand too much to fail freely. You imagine too clearly to accept reality's imperfection. This is not weakness, it is the natural state of intelligence. The curse and gift are the same thing, but here is a liberation I offer you. Completion is its own form of wisdom. The finished thing, however flawed, teaches the world. The perfect thing in your mind teaches nothing. My bronze horse, destroyed by arrows, taught me more about creation than all my completed paintings taught me about perfection. It taught me that perfection pursued beyond the point of completion is not virtue, it is vanity. It is the ego protecting itself from judgment by never offering anything to judge. Every work I abandoned sits in some villa, some church, some collection, speaking this same truth. The gap between vision and execution is not a problem to solve. It is the location of all true learning. You will never eliminate this gap. You will learn to work within it. The gap is where art happens. The gap is where discovery lives. The gap between what you intended and what you created, that gap contains everything valuable. If your execution perfectly matched your vision, you would learn nothing. The material would teach you nothing. Reality would have nothing to say. But reality always has something to say. And it speaks through the gap. You are not trapped by lack of intelligence. You are trapped by excess of vision. This is a noble trap, but it is still a trap. The mind that sees further must learn to act closer. The eye that envisions perfection must teach the hand to accept completion. What I wish I had understood at 30, your work does not need to match your vision. It needs to exist. Existence is its own form of perfection. The painting completed poorly teaches more than the painting imagined beautifully. Not just teaches you, teaches the world. Teaches the next person who attempts the same thing. Teaches the student who sees it and learns what to do differently. Teaches the viewer who experiences something you never intended but that moves them nonetheless. In my final years here in France, I carry with me hundreds of pages of unorganized notes, drawings of anatomy, of machines, of water, of light, of mathematics, of natural philosophy. My student Francesco will inherit them and spend 50 years trying to bring order to my disorder. Most will remain unpublished until long after we are both dust. Some will be lost. Some will be separated and scattered across Europe. Scholars centuries from now will work to reconstruct what I meant to say, what treatises I meant to write, what great works I intended to give the world. This is my legacy. Brilliant observation, incomplete execution. But here is what I have finally learned. If I could speak to my younger self, standing before that first wall in the refectory, paralyzed by vision, I would say this: make the first mark. It will be wrong. Make it anyway. The wall will teach you what your mind cannot. The hand will discover what the eye could not envision. Intelligence shows you possibilities. Wisdom chooses one possibility and makes it real. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait for the perfect plan. Do not wait until you are certain. Certainty comes through motion, not before it. The falcon does not wait until it is certain of catching the dove. It simply flies. Sometimes it catches the dove, sometimes it misses. But it learns through flying, not through waiting. You must become like the falcon. Your intelligence is a gift. Use it to see the dove, to calculate distance, to time your approach. But then fly. Let your preparation serve your motion, not prevent it. The gap between where you are and where the dove is. That gap is crossed through motion, not through thought. I have given you the observations. You must provide the motion. If this teaching served you, if you recognized yourself in these patterns of the brilliant mind trapped by its own vision, then allow this small action. Subscribe so that I may share more observations about the nature of creation, of sight, of the marriage between mind and hand. There is more to learn from these decades of observation, more principles extracted from failure, more methods discovered through the friction between vision and reality. If this resonated with your own experience, if you have felt this paralysis of vision, this weight of seeing too clearly, press like, so that others who suffer the same noble trap might find their way here. Your single action of pressing that small button may bring this teaching to someone who needs it. Someone standing in their own workshop, paralyzed by their own perfect vision, waiting for permission to begin imperfectly. And most importantly, share in the comments what you will complete this week, not what you will plan, not what you will improve, what you will complete. Name it publicly. Declare it specifically. Say, by this day, this thing will be finished, and I will show it, flaws and all. Let your pride enforce what your discipline cannot. Let the public declaration create a boundary that your endless refinement cannot cross. Make yourself accountable to strangers, since you cannot make yourself accountable to your own standards. I leave you with this final thought. The thinking mind is a gift, but gifts must be used, not merely possessed. A tool that remains in the workshop, perfect and unused, has no value. A tool that is used, worn, marked by labor, that tool has served its purpose. Your intelligence is a lantern. Use it to light your path forward. not to examine the infinite darkness around you. The darkness is infinite. You will never map it all. But the path forward, that path requires only enough light for the next few steps. You have enough light. You have always had enough light. You have simply been standing still, shining your lantern in all directions, trying to see everything before taking the first step. Now go. Make something imperfect, complete it anyway, and then make something else. The world does not need your perfect vision. It needs your imperfect action. It needs what you can actually make, not what you can imagine making. Be the person who completes things, not the person who imagines completing things. Be the person whose work exists in the world, flawed and real, rather than the person whose work exists in their mind, perfect and useless. The choice is before you. The same choice I faced every day for 67 years. The same choice I often made poorly. But I am offering you what I learned from making it poorly. Completion is wisdom. Action is teacher. The gap between vision and reality is not your enemy, it is your education. Now go. Begin. Today. Not with planning, with making. One small thing. Completed. Imperfect. Real. This is how you escape the trap of the brilliant mind. This is how you become not just intelligent, but wise. Not just visionary. Not just someone who sees clearly, but someone who makes reality. Go now. Make something. I will be here when you return, with more observations, more principles, more methods. But first, you must go. That is the only way forward. That is the only way out. That is the only way to transform the weight of vision into the wind that fills your sail. Go.